Let's talk some trash. Because right now, Portland's streets are filled with this stuff.
Many of us in the neighborhood have called city and ODOT and other agencies to try to get help.
And there are some plans to try and clean it up, like paying homeless people to do it.
And it's more than just picking up trash. It's that feeling that it's a hand up, not a hand out.
And protests may ramp up again, and police want to arrest people lighting fires and attacking police. But how do you identify someone in a sea of black clothes, in masks, at night? How about informants hidden in the crowd?
Well, I think it certainly increases the fear and mistrust and distrust of the government.
Here's the story.
All right, a lot of big issues to talk about tonight. I'm Dan Haggerty. We're closing out the week with a big show here. All the ways to communicate with us at the bottom of your screen. So use that hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. You can reach out to us on email at thestory@kgw.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Meanwhile, let's talk about what happened today. So Portland police shot and killed a man this morning. We really don't know a ton of details, okay, about exactly what happened. I'm sure you know that as much as I do, really, at this point. It's all over the news. I can't tell you how people are going to react, over this weekend. I don't know. I know that some people were tearing down crime tape at the scene earlier today. It got a little bit contentious. I know people have started to gather where it happened. Some of those people were getting aggressive. At one point, they lit a fire in a dumpster. I don't think that you should be that shocked by this type of reaction. I can tell you that this death, that what happened this morning, involves so many things that we've been talking about on this show over the past few weeks. Let's start talking about it just kind of on what we know so far as what police has told us, because that's where the majority of the information is coming right now. Apparently, they got called to Lentz Park because of a man pointing a gun early this morning, like 9:30 in the morning. When officers got there, they shot the guy. Once with a non-lethal round and again with a gun. And he's dead. That's all we know. Really, it's about all we know. There's some other details, but that's the main stuff. The police didn't go too deep into kind of what happened today. I do know some things, though. For instance, this happened in Lentz. Lentz is one of the neighborhoods the city is trying to give some special attention to. This is an area that has seen a spike in gun crimes directly. I mean, these are the families that don't just hear about this on the news, they hear it outside. It's a community where 1 in 4 families are poor. They live in poverty. It's one of our more diverse communities. 60% white, 15% Hispanic, 15% Asian, 6% black. The shooting happened in a park, right? And according to the city's new $6 million plan, park rangers will soon be dispatched around the city parks to help to tamper down gun crimes. Now, they weren't involved in this today. There were no rangers out there in that park when this happened. But I'm pretty curious to know what they would have done if they would have been there. And most glaringly to me, this happened in the one neighborhood where the street response team is answering calls. The pilot program, right? The new unarmed team of EMTs and crisis counselors who are supposed to respond to people in crisis. This is the team that's supposed to go in when someone is having a mental break, as it appears may have been the case today with this man, instead of a police officer with a gun. And I think a lot of people were wondering why they weren't called in today. So we asked police, and the answer was pretty simple.
Based on what I know of the call for service that we received, this would not have fit within the protocols to dispatch them. This would not have been one of their calls. They don't respond to calls where it's reported that someone has a weapon.
Now, on the topic of this team, it brings us to a story that we think is worth your time. See, Willamette Week, they reported that the street response team is getting off to a very slow start because dispatchers aren't calling them. They're not sending them on things. The report says this: in Eugene, a similar program called Cahoots responds to about 20% of calls dispatched by 911. In Portland, the number is far less than 1%. Granted, this is just a pilot program, keep that in mind. But the story also says that the team is equipped to handle between 6 and 12 calls during an 8-hour shift, 5 days a week. And they have only been called out a total of 7 times in the first 2 weeks of April. Now, while the situation in Lentz, again, would not have involved the street response team, still a lot of questions about what they have been doing in that neighborhood. As far as the man who was killed by police this morning and how the community will react and continue to react tonight, tomorrow, over the weekend, We'll have to wait and see what happens. So stay with KGW tonight and over this weekend for the latest. Meanwhile, let's get to our big story, shall we? Tonight we're talking about a huge trash problem in Portland. We get emails, we get comments, we get tweets, we get phone calls. People stop me in the street. They're telling me all I see is trash around this neighborhood. And if it's not on your street, you don't really have to look that far and hard to find one where you will find trash. Case in point, a story we covered yesterday with one of the worst trash piles we've seen around here in a while. I mean, it's not really even a pile. I think maybe it's kind of a trash mountain. This is at the corner of Burnside and Northeast 160th. It stretches about a block and a half. A man living in a tent nearby says that this is all his stuff. Here's what a neighbor told us when we sent one of our crews out there to ask about it.
It has been here for about a year now. There's one person adding to this pile. Many of us in the neighborhood have called city and ODOT and other agencies to try to get help to get the pile removed. And some are told that it takes going to court to get the fella and his pile to be gone, but I've called ODOT, they never came out. No one's ever done anything about this situation, and it's now causing a rat problem in the neighborhood.
Rats. And apparently, it's not just rats. The pile, she was telling us, actually caught fire at one point. That neighbor told us that fire crews, they came out, of course, to put it out, and then a hazmat team showed up and they picked up some syringes, and then they left. All the other stuff stayed. We asked the city, why? Why isn't anybody cleaning this up? They told us this. We're aware of the site and that they have sent crews there to pick up garbage a number of times, but the site has a very low health and safety risk assessment score. So it does not meet our criteria for a removal. The individual who is residing there says that the items in the area are his personal property, which means we can't collect it. Okay, all right. So the city says they can't do anything about it. Well, that answer, call me crazy, didn't really sit that well with me. So we decided to go straight to the top. We sent our story, the interview you just saw and more, video of that huge pile of trash, to the mayor, asking if he's going to do anything about it. We got a response from his office, but they didn't say anything specific about that pile or what they plan to do about it at all. The statement says this, in part: the mayor sees what everyone sees. The city needs a deep clean. That's why, after pausing some cleanup actions out of an abundance of caution for the health of workers and homeless people due to the pandemic, the city is ramping up cleanup actions. We also reached out to the rest of the Portland City Council asking if they agree with how the situation has been handled so far, and we haven't heard back. Nobody said anything yet, but we'll let you know. I mean, answering the questions about that one pile of trash can tell us a lot about a lot of different piles of trash. Now, the mayor has told us before, right, that he's working on solutions to these trash problems that are piling up. But we haven't been able to get any specifics yet, like who is going to clean these up? When will they start? How much will it cost? That kind of stuff. But this week, we had a breakthrough, thanks to one of your viewer questions. It turns out there's not just one plan in the works, not just two plans, but three. Three plans to ramp up trash pickup here in the Portland area. Here's Maggie Vespa.
We promised you we'd stay on it, and we're by no means done. But today we can tell you about three plans to ramp up trash pickup in the Portland area. One from the city of Portland, one from Multnomah County, and one from the regional government Metro. In fact, the city's project is already up and running, and we only found out about it because of Katie's question, or rather idea, last week. She wrote in and said, "My idea is paying homeless people to clean trash up. Instead of recycling cans as a source of money, pay people for bags of trash. It could work." So we sent that idea to the city, and we found out they just launched a pilot program that does just that. It started in February, and staff sent us these photos of the program in action. Basically, the city is paying homeless people $20 an hour, a few hours a week, to clean up trash. Portland partnered with a program called Ground Score Association. It's run by a nonprofit, Trash for Peace. They've hired 28 people so far, and we met up with coordinators earlier this week.
And it's more than just picking up trash. It's that feeling that it's a hand up, not a hand out.
This is something that we've talked about together for years. And I think that even things like, I'm going to compare it to working from home. Like, everybody's jobs have suddenly been able to be remote. And like this concept of we don't have to do things the way that we've already done them. And I think that we've had overwhelming support.
Staff want to keep this going, and they plan on asking the City Council for money to expand the pilot program as part of next year's budget. There's no hard price tag yet, but for reference, they've spent about $10,000 on this in the last 2 months. All right, on to the county's plan now. And basically, the Joint Office of Homeless Services wants to copy the city's plan, but go way bigger. They're asking Multnomah County for $3 million to hire as many as 100 homeless people to pick up trash starting this summer. And they're also hoping to pay $20 an hour. They, like the city, say the rationale is simple. This is skilled work, staff say, involving biohazards and waste management at times, and $20 an hour is a living wage.
It's also a chance to get people workforce training, because we think about supportive housing, the services that we're going to start funding a lot more of as this funding for Metro comes in. Part of that is it's not just behavioral health resources. It's not just help with someone who has a disabling condition. It's also income acquisition. It's also workforce training, getting job skills.
Now, he mentioned funding from Metro. The county hopes to pay for it with money from the Here Together Supportive Services measure approved by voters in May of 2020. Okay, plan number 3 again comes from Metro. And for this one, let's back up a little. In January of 2020, Metro cut their trash pickup resources in half when they stopped using free inmate labor. The reason? First, a flu outbreak, then COVID prompted Multnomah County to lock down the jail, so inmates couldn't leave. Now, Metro says they want to end the practice anyway because it doesn't line up with their values on equity and fair pay. So this summer, the agency wants to regroup and hire people recently out of or impacted by the correctional system to pick up trash.
85% of people who go in prison get out, so that's a large percentage of individuals who are coming out into our communities, reintegrating our communities. And I think one of the best things for individuals who have to navigate obstacles of having a criminal record is workforce development stability.
So let's break down the numbers on this one. Metro wants to hire 6 two-man crews plus a supervisor for each. That would double their current trash pickup ranks, putting them at pre-pandemic levels. And they're also hoping to pay people $20 an hour. Staff think this will cost about $2.5 million, and they want to pay for that with solid waste fees. And here's the deal. If you're thinking Portland's been a mess for a while, why is this all happening now? Well, it's because the new fiscal year starts July 1st, so local governments right now are building their new budgets, meaning all of these pitches still have to be approved, and there are likely more coming. But it is clear, based on these ideas, that these local agencies are prioritizing cleaning up Portland. And again, we'll stay on it.
How did we get here? The trash problem has been growing since the beginning of the pandemic. Over the past year, the regional government Metro has received more than 7,000 complaints about illegal dump sites in the Tri-County area. The vast majority of the complaints are in Portland. Before the pandemic started, Metro's RID program would respond to an illegal dumping site in about a few days. Right now, if you report trash, it takes an average of 46 days, about a month and a half, for a crew to come out and clean it up. Data shows that since October, the number of sites cleaned has dropped significantly. Part of the problem, Metro says, is that as soon as they clean up some sites, they get trashed again.
And we have a lot of reoccurring sites, so we will get them cleaned up and then they become a problem again.
When COVID hit, Portland suspended clearing homeless camps for months. Trash that would have normally been cleaned up instead piled up. But Metro's data shows that 60% of the trash they clean up comes from residential sources, and 37% of it is from homeless people. They say the evidence comes from photos and videos, but also from mail and documents in the trash. Metro cut its workforce in half when it stopped using inmates to clean up dump sites last year. Without that labor, only a pair of 2-person crews has been cleaning up all of the sites. Many areas of the city, especially along Interstate 84, haven't been touched since 2019. And that's how we got here. We're gonna do some counting after the break. We're counting vaccines, we're counting our population, and we're counting police informants. It'll make sense, trust me, when the story continues.
Welcome back. Whenever we talk about trash on this show, we get a ton of comments, and I get it. It's because it's everywhere. You can't help but see it, and I'm just as confused as you are about that giant pile of trash that we keep reporting on, and I'll continue to report on until I can figure out what the heck's going on with it. Keep sending us your questions, your comments, your concerns, your critiques, all that stuff. Use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. Now, earlier this week, we spent a big part of our show talking about the protests, the ones that have been happening on and off in Portland for about a year now. We wanted to know, who are the protesters? Why are they out there specifically? What do they want? What do they want to see happen? Well, tonight, let's look at the police side of things. They've made thousands of arrests. Many of those cases have been dropped, but not all of them, like arson or attempted murder. After looking through those more serious cases, investigative reporter Kyla Boshi found something pretty interesting and concerning for some civil rights advocates. Police have infiltrated the protests.
An undercover informant, plainclothes FBI agents, tactics typically used in drug cases or serious crimes, are being used by police monitoring protests in Portland, according to court records. And civil rights attorneys fear this police surveillance may violate the right to free speech.
I think it has a substantial chilling impact on First Amendment speech.
J. Ashley Albies, a civil rights attorney in Portland, worries the tactic may deter law-abiding citizens from participating in demonstrations and undermine trust between law enforcement and the community.
Knowing that there are police undercover and not knowing who they are is also designed to sow distrust amongst demonstrators that are out there.
On April 13th, Portland police declared a riot after demonstrators threw fireworks and set a fire at the Portland Police Association building. Officers arrested one person, 19-year-old Alma Raven Guido. Court records later revealed that an unnamed informant within the crowd helped identify Raven Guido, who is facing charges of arson, criminal mischief, and riot. The informant has no criminal convictions, has a history of providing credible and reliable information on multiple prior investigations, explained a fire lieutenant in court papers. It's not clear how often or under what circumstances Portland Police uses informants to monitor protests. Portland Police directives define an informant as an individual working for a member in an undercover status. Confidential informants can be paid or work for case consideration. Leniency.
The people handling those informants have to adhere to guidelines and training.
Mike Levine is a retired DEA supervisory officer and undercover specialist.
It used to be in prosecutions, they did not like informants because, let's face it, most informants are criminals with dirtbag records.
Court records indicate Portland police have also relied on plainclothes FBI agents to infiltrate and monitor recent demonstrations in Portland. On October 11th, prosecutors said FBI agents in plain clothes watched a man use a metal baton to smash out the windows of the Oregon Historical Society, Portland State University, and many other businesses. The FBI agents then relayed information about the suspect to Portland police, according to court records. 24-year-old Malik Muhammad is facing felony charges for the vandalism, along with attempted aggravated murder charges for two different incidents where he allegedly threw lit Molotov cocktails at police.
It's definitely not a new tactic.
Jillian Snyder, a retired NYPD officer who teaches criminal justice, explained using undercover police to monitor large public protests is a long-standing practice. The tactic allows police to monitor protest movements and, if necessary, root out those committing violent criminal acts.
There's a reason for it. They're going there to ensure that the protest remains peaceful because everyone has a right to protest as long as we remain peaceful at it.
Having a uniformed officer in the crowd might incite anger, especially during anti-police rallies.
So if they use plainclothes officers, it could lessen the recognizability of them, but still allow them safely and from a distance to monitor what's going on at the protests.
Civil rights lawyers argue there should be greater transparency and accountability if police continue to infiltrate protest crowds.
Well, I think it certainly increases the fear and mistrust and distrust of the government.
We reached out to Portland Police for comment. They acknowledged our request, but couldn't provide a comment prior to deadline due to limited staffing. We also reached out to the FBI. The FBI declined to comment on any specific case or activity. In a statement, the FBI said, "Our efforts are solely focused on identifying, investigating, and disrupting individuals who are inciting violence and engaging in criminal activity." The FBI went on to say it respects the rights of people to peacefully exercise free speech. Our focus is not on peaceful protesters, but on those threatening their safety and the safety of others with violence and destruction of property. Kyle Aboshi, KGW News.
Thank you to Kyle. Now let's count some vaccines, shall we? We like to do this every day. Why not today? More than 1.58 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose of a vaccine. The majority of those people have gotten their second dose, but that puts us at 37.6% of the state's population with at least one shot. Talking about Washington, they're almost at 3 million. In fact, they give us the numbers every couple of days, so I don't know if this is yesterday's number or what. They don't update us as often as Oregon does, but they might be at 3 million now. But as of yesterday, 2.976 million. So they're getting really close with people with at least one shot. That's about 39% of that state's population. Now, I want to explain something about the count that we do on this show each night, because we get questions about this pretty often. When we give the percentage of people with one shot, that is the percentage of our entire population. So every man, woman, and child. The Washington State Department of Health, they list both the numbers of the people vaccinated and the percentage of people on their website. Now, the Oregon Health Authority, they just list the raw numbers. So they don't give you a percentage. So we started calculating that percentage ourselves. The thing is, we don't have the new census data yet from the count in 2020, which will ultimately be the most accurate population data. We asked OHA for the population number that they use, but they wouldn't give it to us, which we were like, well, okay. So instead, we used data from PSU that used a collection of data to make an educated estimate of our population, which was good. It was good for us for a while, a nice tool. We would do the math and then report the percentage from that. But now we got kind of, I think, the best numbers, and it comes from the CDC. They do it for us now. Their data seems to be a bit more up to date even than the state's websites. So we use the count and percentage from the CDC website, and it counts our entire population in that percentage, not just the people eligible for the shot. To which Rick emailed me and said, because children can't be vaccinated yet, can we remove them from our population count or count them separately? And to that, I'm going to say no. And the reason I'm going to say that is because I want to count everyone, because we're talking about herd immunity, and that counts everyone, including kids. This headline here from NPR, this was posted a month ago. Moderna gives first vaccine shots to young kids as part of COVID-19 study. In fact, right now, all the major pharma companies are testing vaccines on kids, some as young as 6 months old. And last week, Pfizer and BioNTech formally asked the CDC to expand the emergency use authorization so they can start giving the vaccines to kids 12 and older. So that's why we're going to continue to count our percentage of the total population, because ultimately that's who they want to see get vaccinated. All right, keep your questions and your comments and complaints and all that stuff coming in. I'm going to read a few of them as we finish the week and the story right after this. All right, we don't have a ton of time. Zach wrote in and said, talking about the shooting involving police that happened today, sure seems like a good time for body cameras on police, doesn't it? It's been a long discussion. The city says it's too expensive. Not really to buy them, but to upkeep them, to keep all the data stored. Now, you can find a bunch of our coverage. Kyle Aboshi's done some really interesting stories on that. But if you have interest in that, you can look them up on the KGW YouTube channel. I do want to thank everybody. We got a ton of reaction tonight. A lot of people talking to us. It is an 80-degree Friday in April. Even I was thinking, can we just run last night's show? But we had a lot of important topics to talk about tonight. I'm glad that a lot of you showed up and engaged with us. Thanks for being with us this week. And always, we'll see you back here on Monday for The Story.